Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description. Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston. This is an episode of the Midweek Debate and I'm joined as usual by my partner in crime, Tyrone Marshall. Just before we started recording this episode, I caught Ty licking his microphone, so hopefully there's no more of that throughout this episode. But if you hear some noises throughout the next 45 minutes, that's what it might be. Ty, how are you? Clearly hungry.
Yeah, starving, mate. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. My new morning routine's working very well.
Your new morning routine?
Morning routine.
I thought you were moaning more than usual.
Waking up, putting my head in a bowl of water and rubbing some bananas on my face. Have you saw the trend?
No.
See, that proves my point. You are too old to understand the meme. It's been all over Twitter in the last few days.
Mate, I don't follow memes on Twitter these days. What place?
Football, midweek debate. Let's debate something. It's obviously the international break, so we've had to scratch our heads on what to discuss. And you know the drill by now. We like to focus in on a topic in the first part of the podcast. So we're going to look back at the summer transfer window of 2024. Ty, it's almost 12 months ago, that. I mean, it feels like a few weeks ago, to be honest. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
United spent a lot of money, the back Ten Hag. We're going to go through the signings, look at their business, look at who they sold. Just give our thoughts, really. Does that sound good?
Sounds planned to me, Stephen. Let's get the show on the road.
If we go through it in chronological order, it was Joshua Zirkzee who arrived first, Leny Yoro, Matthias de Ligt, Ligt and Mazraoui, Manuel Ugarte. So they were the 5 major signings. There was obviously a few others in the academy. So we'll start off with Zirkzee. I should say all of those signings cost £220 million without including add-ons. So it was a lot of money. It was a pivotal moment, obviously, after the FA Cup. But we'll start with Zirkzee. What have your thoughts been this season? Because he had a very difficult start. Well, he scored on the opening day. But after that, he had a difficult few months. Got hooked against Newcastle at Old Trafford. That was a really embarrassing moment. But since then, it feels like he's becoming a bit of a cult hero, or he has the potential to.
You're right, being sobbed against Newcastle is an embarrassing moment for anyone. It's funny to think back really to that goal on his debut in Ten Hag in his press conference afterwards, talking about how vital it was and how Højlund had to wait so long, and then Zirkzee went months and months without scoring. I mean, I can't think of a player, certainly in modern United history, who has had more ups and downs in their first season than Zirkzee. This is where we need Samuel, because he would probably be able to pluck someone who had a comparative ride in their first season.
But he wouldn't be able to talk about their XG, would he? That's the thing.
That's true. He wouldn't know. I think he enjoyed that last week. You think of obviously he was struggling for form, the Newcastle moment, the missed penalty against Fulham. He's had some terrible, terrible moments, but in a way it's kind of made him this almost like a bit of a cult hero, maybe. There was that desire to kind of defend him after what happened against Newcastle. And I think recently he's got a lot better. I think he's a better signing for Amorim than he was for Ten Hag, which is a strange thing to say, but he was clearly signed by Ten Hag to play as a number 9. And that would have been the only role he could have ever played under Ten Hag. And he's just not a centre forward, is he? He's not a striker. And I think he's looked so much better playing in one of these number 10 roles under Amorim.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I completely agree. And his close ball control is just fantastic. I don't think I've seen a player in recent years. It's almost a throwback to how players used to be, kind of having that tight control, weaving in and out. He's brilliant in that regard. But is he going to be a long-term success in that role? Because they need someone who can do a little bit more in one of those number 10 positions, don't they? I mean, it's been great to see him kind of excel in that position after struggling at centre forward, but long term, it doesn't really feel like he can play there all the time.
No, you wouldn't. I think there's an argument he could still be a squad player in this team. I think that's certainly a possibility. He's going to be reasonably difficult to shift after one season, although he was a fairly cheap signing. Maybe there'll be some loan interest. And United have got a lot of number 10s. It's an area where they are pretty strong. So you can certainly see a chance of him going there or even being a squad player. I don't think he's a regular starter. But he's certainly showing something there. I mean, at the start of the season, I kind of described him as in a way, a poor man's Roberto Firmino. He was that number 9 under Ten Hag, and he just dropped off deeper and deeper and deeper. But it worked with Firmino because he had Salah and Mane scoring 40 goals a season. Zirkzee was dropping off, and looking to wingers who just don't score. Now, he's almost like he's a throwback in his style. There's a bit of Berbatov in there, that kind of languidness, and you can imagine it could frustrate at times because he does kind of stroll around the pitch. It's that like insouciance, really, that.
He definitely works harder than Berbatov, I think. But I get your point. He does have a very similar style.
Yeah, he does have a similar style, and it's very like languid on the ball, which when you lose it can probably end up as a bit of criticism. But he's an interesting player. I think he's been good to watch at times in that number 10 role. Like you say, the tricks and flicks and little nutmegs are great to see. Long term, I'm not convinced he's got a huge future.
Well, if you forget that he was meant to be signed as a goal scorer, then he's been an all right signing. But he was signed to be a striker. Obviously, that hasn't worked out, and you have to judge him on where he's playing now. And it's difficult to grade him. Is he a C+? We're not doing grades, actually. I'm just going to give one to Zirkzee. But do you know what I mean?
It's news to me.
It is quite difficult to assess him in that sense.
Yeah, well, it is because, like you say, he's not really doing what he signed for. But then, the only reason United signed him is because he had a release clause. Let's be honest. That's the only reason.
Paid more than.
Which they paid more than, but so they could spread it.
Yeah,
over
and rival
years.
supporters have kind of saw a lot of that on social media, taking the mick out of Dan Ashworth when he left and saying, well, he paid more than Zirkzee's release clause. He did that because it was beneficial to United.
Well, in theory, it's beneficial to United.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kicks the can down the road. United sign all their players on Klarna these days, don't they?
Just like you with all your clothes. Stephen, where's that from? Right, okay, I'll buy that.
It kicks the can down the road for them. As we've seen Ratcliffe say this summer about what they're going to spend. So yeah, you can see the why it was done. But the only reason they ever went for him in the first place was because he was cheap and available. I don't think he was ever the man that they needed. Just like I don't think Højlund was the man they needed the year before that. But that's a different debate, which we've already done about 3 times.
Yeah, I think so. I will give him his dues. He has showed pretty impressive character, I think, after that Newcastle moment. A lot of players would have sulked, and it might have ruined their season and ruined the chances of kind of showing what they can do. But that Anfield game, I thought, was the pivotal moment because the fans sung his name, rallied behind him, and he would have really appreciated that. And since then, he's improved. So that's been nice to see. Moving on then to Leny Yoro. We were up at Murrayfield in Scotland Town in the summer.
Yeah.
You drove up, do you remember? What a trip. Fantastic
Great
trip.
fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just like this podcast, only for 4 hours.
Yeah, so if you don't like the podcast, you can imagine what that car journey was like. But he's arrived from Lille, big money signing, and he arrived with a big reputation. That first game, I kind of joked on that he would be a future Ballon d'Or winner. I think he played one of the balls. It was like a cross-field switch. I think it was around 50 yards.
It was. Yeah.
Looking back, I was speaking to our editor about this the other day. That performance was overplayed, but in pre-season, you are looking for something to write about. And everyone was buzzing about Yoro that day. Obviously, suffered an injury and we didn't see him until a bit later on. He's took a little bit of time to adapt, but we're starting to see a lot more promising signs, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I don't think he's had a great season. I don't think anyone can really suggest he's had a great season. There've been injuries, there've been difficult games. You come back to that Southampton game at Old Trafford when Sulemana, I think it was, absolutely ran him ragged. There's been better games as well, but he is still very young. He's still. I think he's still only 18, isn't he?
He's 19.
He's 19 now. Yeah. So there's a lot of potential to come, and he needs a run of games. He should. He should fit this system. Playing 3 centre-backs should open up more opportunity for him to play more games. I think he's a signing you've got to judge further down the road. There's clearly a lot of potential there. He's gone into a team, he went into a team that was struggling as well, a team that's changed manager. Probably never experienced anything like this in his career.
How important is that, I think, is context? When you're 18,
at that age,
about to turn 19, you move to a new club, different language. You're in a struggling side. They've had a change of manager. When you kind of think about all the context, it's really hard to show your best form and to give the best version of yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a massive, massive thing when you make that step and you sign for the club. Kind of, I was going to say unexpectedly. I mean, it sounds, was probably more unexpected to us than it was to him. It's fair to say. I don't think they kidnapped him and
I think so.
just brought him to Carrington. But, I think it was still, let's be honest, he was expecting to sign for Real Madrid for most of the last season, I think. And in the end, that didn't happen. And then you sign for Ten Hag, and then another manager comes in with different ideas, and then you're injured. So it's, there's mitigating factors there. It's been a difficult season for him. I can't say loads of games are springing to the top of my mind now where you think, he looked the real deal. But I think they will in time. I think if he has a full pre-season under Amorim, if he stays fit, I think we'll see more of him. And, I'm certainly not writing him off. I still think, I thought at the time United had struck a very good deal. And I still think United have got a very good deal. They were aggressive with it. They blew Real Madrid out of the water financially. And they got the player they wanted. And, there's clearly an excellent player in there. There's clearly potentially world-class player in there, given the teams that wanted him. Let's not forget Liverpool wanted him this summer as well. United acted quickly to get him ahead of Liverpool. They were aggressive in beating Real to his signature. So there's a real player there. I think we've seen bits of it this season, just not on a consistent basis.
Glimmers is the word, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Just glimmers, really.
Yeah.
If you went to Real Madrid, they have this kind of policy or approach where if they're signing a young player, they'll bed him in slowly and gradually. They'll have senior players ahead of them who are very good, and they'll get obviously more than one or two appearances, but they'll slowly be developed into the side. It's different at United, isn't it? Because he's been thrown into the cauldron a bit faster. He's starting a lot more games now. I think if you went to Madrid, it would have been more of a gradual process, is what I'm trying to say. And I think as a player, would you want that, or would you want to start lots of games? I think as a player, you'd want to be starting games, but what's actually best for your development long term? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think in the circumstances, he'd have probably started as many games at Real than he has at United, given that they've been playing midfielders at centre-back for a lot of the season.
Yeah, injuries this season.
Injuries have kind of opened up gaps. United have a lot of centre-backs, albeit of fairly mixed level. But yeah,
look at Varane, for example, when he signed for Real Madrid, he wasn't thrown into that starting side straight away every week. He was kind of gradually bedded in, and that really helped him develop and become the player that he was.
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it, what's best for a player, because having a season like this, it can be good for your development, but there's no hard and fast rule that says it is good for your development. It could have knocked his confidence. It could have knocked a big year out of him. Development in terms of development.
That's what happens when you lick the microphone. You get distracted when you're looking at it. It's not a snack tie. It's not a snack.
That pint
Stop
this morning. We've still
mind.
not got the midweek pint going, have we? Yeah, so I don't think there's any hard and fast rule that it's better one way or the other, particularly. I think we'll see more of him next season. I think we'll be able to judge more next season. I still think he'll come good. There's clearly a good player there, but he probably does have a slightly different development plan at United compared to Real Madrid, but it's certainly not worked out smoothly. I'm sure what he was told at the summer isn't what has panned out. And
it was the first signing really that felt like a true Ineos signing, wasn't it? It was the mark of their time in charge of the club. When you look at Joshua Zirkzee, Dutch player, Ten Hag. We're about to come on to Ligt and Mazraoui. Mazraoui played under Ten Hag, so at Ligt. So Ten Hag's fingerprints were all over that summer window to an extent. And Yoro was that kind of Ineos signing. Young, has a high ceiling, comes with a lot of potential. And fair play, because he didn't come that cheap. He probably will be value in a few years' time. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he develops in the next few years. Yeah. Moving on then to Ligt and Mazraoui. Don't know which one to start with. We'll start off with Ligt, I suppose. A lot was made of him really because he had a bad time of things at Bayern Munich, Juventus. He has regressed since his Ajax days, where he was tipped to become one of the world's best defenders. We just kind of briefly touched on Ligt before we recorded. I think he's just been fine for me. I said that the other episode. I think he's been all right. I don't think he's been tremendous. I don't think he's been bad. I just think he's been all right. You probably tip him more into the favour of he's been good.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Can I say like a steak, medium to rare? Can I say fine to good? He has been very good in the last few weeks, I will say.
Yeah.
There's been some very good performances. The game against Fulham was his best display, I thought, for United. He just battled, didn't he? Yeah, and that challenge where he busted along to get across to the side, what a fantastic tackle that was. So it's been better recently. But at the start of the season, I feel it was a bit unconvincing. What's your opinion? I've just kind of given it away, but...
Yeah, I would roughly go along with that. Like you, it was unconvincing at the start of the season. It was... I think It was a funny signing because he's still a name that for supporters who want to see transfers, which a lot of them do these days, they decide how a season's going to go based on transfers. He was a name, and you sign someone like Matthijs de Ligt, and it's like, what signing? But the fact is that Juventus sold him at a loss. Bayern Munich sold him at a loss. That wouldn't be happening. And I don't think he was terrible for either club, but those two clubs wouldn't be selling him at a loss if he had lived up to the standards they maybe expected. And then United sign him kind of purely on this idea of a reunion with Ten Hag, which then gets inevitably blown up within a couple of months. I don't think that was a surprise to anyone that happened. So a bit of a funny signing, but I think he's got better. I think he got better under Amorim than he was under Ten Hag. I think he had that funny period at the start of the season where it's concerning to me for his level that you look in the summer, he didn't get a minute of football in the Euros, and that would be a worry, I think, looking at that. And then he does eventually get called up and plays when someone got injured. Can't remember who it was. This the Lazio defender, I think De Vries, wasn't it? And he had a nightmare in that.
It was shades
of September international break. I think it was.
There was shades of Harry Maguire in that episode, wasn't it? Where he kind of got embarrassed by his national team manager. He was kind of a bit of a joke figure, and it looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders really at that time. Yeah,
I think that was clearly a difficult period for him. Ten Hag was very defensive of him at that point, and I don't think there's been many games. I can't think of many where you look at him and you think he's been disastrous or he's had a nightmare. I don't think he was brilliant at the start of the season. I think he's got a lot better, and I still think this could be. I think they paid $38.5 million for him. That for a player who clearly still has a lot of potential, that's a good deal. And maybe he's never going to be the player that we all thought he was 5 years ago, 6 years ago now when he was 19 at Ajax. But I still think he can play a really good role in this back three under Amorim. He's an aggressive defender. I think he's good on the ball. I still think it's got the potential to be a really good signing. And I think this year it's been, for 38 million, I think it's been pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's been fine and good. I mean, 38 million, it's hard to get value in this market for that fee. And he's probably done what his price tag is kind of suggested he would really, what you'd expect from a player for that much money. Someone who hasn't done what you'd expect for a fee of that much is Mazraoui, because he was signed for 12.8 million. What a fantastic player. He's kind of not been getting the appreciation in the last few weeks, maybe last month and a half, and there's been a few drop-offs, I think, in some of his performances. But for the majority of the campaign, he has been brilliant, I think. Technically superb, a very good technical player. Can play anywhere. I think he's played in 6 positions. So he's just so versatile.
Number 10's his best for me.
I mean, so bizarre that he was played in that role, wasn't it? To be fair, Ten Hag was just asking to be sacked at stages with some of the decisions he was making. But yeah, when we're talking about getting value in the market, Mazraoui has been superb value.
Yeah, he has. He has been, he has been great value. There's no doubt about that. Been a really good signing. I mean, the funny thing is that certainly under Ten Hag, I think there was this massive appreciation of what a good signing he was building. There was, the fans were loving him at that point. Then Amorim comes in, and Amorim talked about him so positively and so effusively. Yeah, we did a classic international break thing last week of picking what we think is Amorim's strongest team between now and the end of the season. And I think 3 of us did it, and not one of us had Mazraoui in the starting lineup, which is quite interesting, I think.
But is that not because he started to play at right centre-back quite a lot?
Well, I don't think he's a wing-back, to be honest. No. I don't think he's got any future as a wing-back. I think he's best as one of those 2 centre-backs at the side, whether it's right or left. Right would be better for me. But again, I don't think he's in the strongest group for there. So I think going forward, I think he's an excellent squad player. I think he could play wing-back in an emergency, an injury crisis. I think he's one of those, the type of player who is your 4th or 5th choice centre-back and your 2nd or 3rd choice wing-back is really worth having in the squad. You'd have him in there rotationally.
And he's probably always going to be fit as well.
Yeah, he seems to,
with the exception of the heart palpitation, which, I mean, he couldn't control that.
No, he can control that.
He came back very quickly from that as well.
The next game, incredibly. So, yeah, I think he's a really good squad player. I think his attitude, his commitment and his attitude has been brilliant and has really added something to this squad. But I thought it was interesting that none of us had him in our strongest team. And, looking at it now, you'd have, Martinez, Maguire, De Ligt, probably the strongest back three for me at the moment. Then you'd have Yoro really close. Then Mazraoui and Heaven.
We were going off
now.
Players who were available, weren't we? So Martinez wasn't
available.
So I had Yoro,
we still didn't have Mazraoui in there.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
And again, like I would now you've got Dorgo as the left wing back. I still think they need a right wing back.
They do massively,
but I'd rather have Diallo playing there than Mazraoui. So I think he'll be a really good squad player next year. Like you say, the kind of fanfare around him has died down a little now, but I still think for that kind of money, he's been a great signing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The last few weeks it has settled down a bit, but there was a spell maybe from September, November time through to January where everyone was raving about him, and rightly so. He deserved it. It's interesting when you look at that transfer window because a lot was made of it at the time. The club said they were very happy with the deals that they did. A few weeks into the season, we're scratching our heads thinking, hang on a minute, it's pretty crap. Obviously, I've not mentioned Manuel Ugarte, so we'll talk about him before kind of assessing the business as a whole.
Forgot about him there,
I did. Thought I could play it down actually, but
we got this bit.
I didn't get away with it. I would have got away if it wasn't for you and the meddling kids.
No, I spotted.
Yeah, so Ugarte on deadline day, 42 million for initial fee. I think another 8 million after that from PSG. United insisted he was their main target all summer, and that their bargaining tactics kind of got them the price that they wanted. Again, he was another who made a mixed start. It took him a while to settle. I think he was struggling with the intensity of the Premier League, in my opinion. He didn't look up to that level to begin with. But there were some promising performances against low opposition, wasn't it? If you think back to the Carabao was against Barnsley in the Cup.
Dominated Barnsley.
As you'd expect. Bloody Barnsley. Was it 7-0, wasn't it? I think at Old Trafford. So it's the game you would expect them to dominate. And against Leicester in the Cup as well. So there was clearly signs of promise there. But he's really found his feet, I think, into the winter. And he's benefited from this partnership with Fernandes, actually, hasn't he? In the pivot. Samuel tells us off as in the pivot. He doesn't like that term. It's a very hipster term. Yes. But yeah, them two have complemented each other really nicely, and they've become good foils for each other, I think. And we've started to see the best out you got in the last 2 months or so, 3 months. Yeah,
we have. And like you say, he was a big target in the summer, but he wasn't Ten Hag's top target for that role. And I think he's better suited to this system. I mean, he's played it before under Amorim at Sporting, but also it can kind of hide that one weakness, which is in possession. It's not to say he's disastrous in possession. He's played some really nice passes this year, but I think as a midfield player, that is the one area you'd say isn't excel at. He's not always brilliant at the ball, on the ball rather. I think he's solid enough. But if you were playing if you're playing something like City or Liverpool do, where you're kind of playing 4-3-3, but you're playing one sitter and then two number 8s, I think you wouldn't have any concern about his defensive work, but in terms of how he progresses the ball, I think you'd maybe have concerns. But in this system, where he can play next to Fernandes, and, I think they've been a really good partnership. I do think they complement each other really well.
Having said that, and I agree, is that partnership going to be the starting partnership in those positions next season? Is that good enough to... Is that Fernandes' long-term role next to Ugarte? Or do you need a even more mobile number 8? I mean, Fernandes is the ultimate player, really, but did not need him a bit more further forward on the pitch?
Well, I would...
That's not me saying that he should be. It's just an interesting question, isn't it?
Well, I think the problem with moving Fernandes further forward is that Fernandes and Ahmad then become your 10s, and you've then got Garnacho, Mainu, Mason Mount, Eriksen, Zirkzee, and you say Eriksen's going to go, but I think to be honest, people like to hear it. If that's the case, you sell Kobbie Mainoo. You have to sell Kobbie Mainoo, and I don't think anyone wants that to happen. But you're kind of at that position where, I think Ahmad's long-term future lies as a number 10 rather than a right wing back. I think he'll play both, but I think he'll be more of a 10. And then I think you need that space next to him to play one of Mainoo and Garnacho. I think those 3 as 10s with someone else in there is promising. I think you need another option deeper, because at the moment, I think
Casemiro is the backup option.
Casemiro is the backup option, and I think Amorim's made it very clear that he ain't going to play Mainoo defensively.
No, not after the first few weeks. Casemiro's been better, hasn't he? But he needs to go, doesn't he?
He has been better. I still think, I think the Europa League suits him.
Yeah, especially against Spanish opposition.
It's just a slightly slower tempo, slightly less intensity. I can see him being a Europa League specialist between now and the end of the season. But I do think you need someone else there. But, I would have no qualms about playing Fernandes in that deeper role alongside Ugarte, to be honest. I think the bigger issue is who you play at number 10 and where you go from there. 'Cause, it's a different debate, and I know it's one the guys touched on Monday, but I still think there's a chance one of Garnacho and Mainu go just because I don't see them both starting as number 10s, to be honest. And I can see a scenario when neither start as number 10s, and at that point, there's probably no natural roles for them at the moment.
So if we wrap it up there with that window, I mean, like I said, I try to say before forgetting Ugarte, everyone was kind of scratching their heads in the first few weeks because before it was quite crap, wasn't it, that window? But it started to look better with more time, I believe. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
I mean, we went through the players there, and we have given a lot of praise. I don't think we've not really been negative on any of them, really, have we? We've not really said that is an awful signing. And
no.
If you look back to, got it up, or I did have it up, to 2022 or 2023.
2022
so yeah,
is
Anthony,
disastrous.
Casemiro, obviously Christian Eriksen, Malacia, Martinez. So Martinez, good signing. Christian Eriksen, good signing. But Anthony and Casemiro for, what's that, a combined fee of
165?
60, yeah, around that. I mean, it's terrible. It was terrible business, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to 2023, Andre Onana, Mason Mount, Rasmus Højlund. They overpaid for Rasmus Højlund, and Mason Mount, for all I think he'll be a success, now he's in Amram system. The facts are he's not played much football and he's been injured a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not really looked like a good signing right now.
Yeah, I mean, that 2023 summer, those are the three big signings. There's question marks over all of them for different reasons right now. You couldn't look at any of them right now and say that's been a successful signing. 2022, I mean, with 3 years on from that, and 4 of those 5 players are probably going to go in the summer. I think that was a disastrous window in hindsight. And it is worth saying that a lot of this is in hindsight. That's maybe the risk we're taking now. If we'd have judged that 2022 window at the end of March 2023, we'd have probably said it was really good.
Because everyone except Anthony, wasn't it? I mean,
even then, I don't think the Anthony...
It was okay. He had it okay first season, but it wasn't good enough.
No,
but I think for the money they paid, his first season wasn't good.
I still think in March 2023, we'd have said there's enough mitigating factors to say he's had an okay season and he'll get better. But that's
because you give the players the benefit of the doubt, especially their first season. I always like to think, give them a year and then really kind of form a solid opinion.
We'd have all said at that point that Casemiro was one of the best recent signings in United history.
Of course he was, yeah. But being a good signing isn't about one season. It's about a couple of seasons, surely,
which is the risk of us doing this podcast now. Like, maybe in 2 years' time, we'll have to go back and delete this episode.
They would have disgraced themselves.
Yeah. But generally, I think if the 3 summers that Ten Hag had, it probably does look the best at the moment. I think it is. It gets a lot of criticism, I think, because of the sheer madness of wanting to sack the manager, then thinking, we won't sack him, but then giving him 200 million to spend and to spend on.
They were very clearly his players.
Well, as Ratcliffe said on the overlap, that's why there's a lot of Dutch players. They gave him the money and then let him do what he wants with it again.
So damning for Ratcliffe and his team and gaining control of football operations, saying we're going to do things differently, hiring people who are going to do things differently, and then doing basically everything the same. Unbelievable, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But, I don't think it's massively surprising that that's what happened, to be honest.
There were some other arrivals. A deal agreed for Sekou Kone, who came from a Malian club for around £1 million. There was recently a deal agreed for Diego Leon, who's going to arrive next summer. But again, those are kind of very Ineos feeling signings, aren't they? Where we're seeing these young lads come in from around the world, so a wider scouting network, coming into the academy initially, kind of getting their fitness up, getting used to kind of England, the demands of football currently. And then I guess potentially they will be flipped long term. Be interesting to see if Kone makes a string of first team appearances. From what I've seen him at under 21 level, he is incredibly raw. He's very green.
Very raw.
I mean, sorry, we were both at the Huddersfield game, weren't we? When he made his first start for the club. Malacia was obviously returning back that night, and he was just so green, very green.
Yeah, and he's come from a club
the other side of the world,
basically, where everything will be so different to this. Even the professionalism of things like the fitness regime and the weights regime and the nutrition and how you live your life and what you do away from the pitch will be so different at a club in Mali to a club at United. And that's for financial reasons as much as reasons of geography and culture and things like that. And it'd be a massive settling in period. And I don't think it's a surprise that maybe it's going to take him time to do that. Those two signings you mentioned, I think they are probably Ineos deals. They're also deals that have got Christopher Vivell's fingerprints all over. You look at the Red Bull network of clubs that he was heavily involved. Obviously now permanently director of recruitment at United. That was something that they did a lot, signing players kind of from well off the beaten track in a way.
They could bring those players into the first team. It's different at United. For all, Nicky Butt said this the other night when I spoke to him. It's different at a club like Brentford or Brighton where you can sign these kind of talents, young talents, and get them in the first team. United need results now, and they need proven quality, don't they? The difference is, could you not? Chelsea have done this recently under Todd Bowley and Claire Lake, where they've signed these players and flipped them before they don't even play for the first team.
No, but I mean, maybe Chelsea. I can't think of any. I mean, the club that does it the best recently is City, probably, and Liverpool have done it a bit, and United used to do it. And the reason that happened was because clubs would sign players. Clubs now will sign players from a City academy because they've been close to it. They've been close to Pep Guardiola. They've smelt it. They've been brought up the right way. They've done training the right way. Oh, he's been at City's academy. He's played loads from the 21s. He's obviously a player. No one's looking at United at the moment and thinking, oh, he's been around Erik ten Hag. He's been in the Ineos system. They're not going to sign players on that. The only way United flip players at the moment is by playing them. And that's clearly a problem. It's kind of why I always think that Virgil van Dijk's the classic example of this in a way, that people always say now, like, wow, why did no one sign him? Why did none of the big clubs sign him from Utrecht or even sign him from Celtic? But big clubs, they don't need to take that risk because fundamentally that's still what it was at the time, because he played for, one mid-table Dutch club and then he'd done well for Celtic where he barely has to defend. And it's easier for Southampton to take that risk. You could say, oh, why didn't United or Liverpool sign him straight from Celtic? He wouldn't have gotten the team. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, that's the model. And that's why
that's why,
without being disrespectful, quote unquote, smaller Premier League clubs kind of benefit from this because they can afford, they have to take that risk, don't they?
Yeah.
And these bigger clubs can't.
Yeah, it's why Brighton can sign these players and they can play them and then they can sell them for a fortune. You look at, Caicedo's a classic example. United wanted him as well. I guarantee if United got him, he wouldn't be the player he is now. And
just 4 million in the
4 million, I think,
with a stumbling block.
Yeah. And then, I was watching a Brighton game the other night and they said, Diego Gomez is playing in midfield. I think that's his name anyway. I was like, who is Diego Gomez and who is he going to for 50 million in 2 years?
That's why I love watching Brighton though, because, we're football journalists. We've got a very good knowledge of football. And you watch Brighton, you're like, who's this lad from South America?
Exactly.
All of a sudden, and you watch him and he's brilliant.
Well, that's it. And then you're like, who's signing him for 50 million in 2 years? But it's the case that, Kone and Lyon are good examples, and maybe Lyon will be different, but United can't play them in the first team. They're not at that level. So it's difficult for United to do what... And it's an easy thing to say, they should do what Brighton do and do what Brentford do. But they can't because they don't exist to live in mid-table in the Premier League. They exist to win titles.
But what they can do is send those players on loan, which Chelsea have done with a lot of their players. For example, look at Minta, who's now at Brighton. Joined Newcastle, never played a game for them. Went on loan at Feyenoord, was flipped for 40 million. You're seeing more Premier League clubs do this, and perhaps Kone needs a loan. I can't see him breaking into the first team in the next year.
No,
he's just too...
I can't. Yeah. I can't. But again, I don't know how much money you're going to make from that. I guess Minta's a good example. I don't really know his background of how much Newcastle paid for him or where they got him from or anything.
From Scandinavia, I'm pretty sure. So he was pretty cheap. But if you can send a player out on loan and they have a storming season, for example, there's a lot of upside to them.
Yeah, well, I guess James Garner is probably the best example at United. But I just think it's a much harder thing to do for a club because the best way to sell players like that is to expose them to first team football. But United just can't do that because their aims, and it's not just United, it's the case for all of the top six, their aims are different. Their aims are to challenge for titles. And United aren't going to start next season by having Diego Leon in the first team, whereas maybe at Brighton, they'd think, well, he can, if he's not starting, he can be Estepinian's backup, he can play in cup games and stuff. Even at United, he's probably not going to get that exposure. So it's harder to make it work, but I guess as long as some of those deals work, then it'll pay off.
We'll quickly touch on some departures. We've went on for a bit there on the incomings and kind of that kind of business. It was 14 departures. Can you name them all?
Absolutely no chance.
Alvaro Fernandez, Will Fish, Amari Forson, Mason Greenwood. Remember him?
How's Will Fish getting on?
I texted him the other day, actually. Hannibal, Charlie McNeil, Maxio Udeli. He didn't reply. Facundo Pilestri, Willy Kamwala, Shola Shoretire, Donny van der Beek, Rafa Varane, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Scott McTominay, Shurateria was another I was supposed to be interviewing. Also didn't reply.
Is Wilfred playing many games?
He has. So at the start of the season, a bit of context to the listeners, me and Ty and Rich had a discussion in the car going up to that game in Leon actually about Will Fish, because I was adamant he would go to a championship club. He did. He was highly regarded, to be fair. He won Player of the Season awards a few times in the academy. Like, for a defender, it was very impressive. Had a fantastic loan at Hibernian, joined Cardiff in the summer on a permanent. But yeah, he's playing now, and that's coincided with them improving results. So fair play. I looked into it the other day. It was a good move for him. Definitely a good move for him. But on that list, I think one that stands out to me, because we're not going to talk about them all, is Amari Forsenthal, because we discussed it at the other podcast, didn't we? He played over Ahmad against Newport in that FA Cup game in January 2024.
No, it was a league game, I think.
Well, there was that league game as well when he started.
Was it Fulham?
When he started, yeah, he started that. But he came on from the bench against Newport, and I remember Ahmad posting something on social media, and he basically lost his head, and he replied to a Sunderland fan saying, "Yeah, I'll be back." But Ahmad was well within his rights to be frustrated. When you look now, you don't really want to criticise a young player. It's not criticism, but the fact is, Forsen hasn't had a kick for Monza, and they're bottom of Serie A. They're getting relegated. Look at what Ahmad's doing. So Ten Hag lost his mind with that one, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think he only played those games as a kind of sweetener to say, sign a contract, you will get chances. And he saw through it, and probably for United's benefit that he saw through it. You know, it does show you that being a good player in the academy or looking good at academy level means absolutely nothing at times when it comes to first team football. And he's probably an example of that last season.
I mean, on that list, the other one who stands out is Alvaro Fernandez. Joined Benfica on a permanent transfer. United have got the buyback option until the summer of 2026, so a year's time. There was a lot of talk of that in the January window, because some fans were kind of saying, well, trigger the bloody thing. Yeah. I think it's worth around £16 million, and they needed a left back. What do you think? You watched any of them? I watched them I've only watched them once at Benfica against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. It was good, very, very good, to be fair. I can't say I watch him every week.
No, I can't say I've watched him every week. I mean, they play a back four, don't they? I don't think he's got huge experience as a wing back. I think Dorgu's clearly more of a specialist than Fernandez is. But he's clearly done very well. I mean, there's talk of Real Madrid being interested, I think, this summer, isn't there? In going back to where he was, Madrid, so he's clearly done very, very well. I think it always surprised me that he didn't get more chances at United, given how bad the left back situation has been there. Certainly when they were playing a back four under Ten Hag. So yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get more chances. And even the fee they sold him for, I guess in hindsight, they could maybe have got a bit more, but I think there's a decent sell on there. I think if Real Madrid do come for him this summer, then they're gonna profit more. And that's the kind of deal that they've done a lot more of recently, and that they need to do more of in terms of selling. Until Ten Hag come in, I think they kept too many young players. I think that's one thing that he did change. You saw it with Garner in that first summer, that when you get to the age of 20, 21, if you're not good enough for the first team, then you need to be sold. There's no point keeping them on for another year.
Yeah, and last summer was probably the first time that we saw a lot of clauses inserted into the deals. And maybe that was Ineos's influence as well. Clearly that sell-ons and stuff like that included. And it just makes a no-brainer, isn't it, to include sell-ons in players? And especially in the PSR world, where you get a little bit of kickback down the line, it's going to help the books. Yeah,
well, I think City made something like 30 million from sell-on clauses in the summer. Again, they are the kings of it, really. And yeah, I think it does just show. I mean, City will probably pocket a tidy sum from Liam Delap this summer as well.
Well, if it was up to you, United would sign him for 100 million, I think.
Well, yeah, I think 100 million slightly. Not sure you were listening intently last week or whatever it was, but yeah, if it was up to me, then I'd certainly be having a look at him.
Not like a journalist to twist someone's words.
Very unusual. Very unusual. Shows your standards, Stephen. But yeah, I think sell-on clauses. It is something United become more proactive at, and I think it's something we've always criticised them for selling players and their inability to sell players. And I think they're getting better at it with the clauses. It's not. To be fair, I don't think it's an easy thing to do at United. There's only two reasons why Manchester United are going to sell a player, and that's because the player has outgrown them and wants to go. Outgrown is probably the wrong word, but the player has reached a world-class level and wants to go, like Ronaldo. The other reason is that they've not lived up to standards, and therefore they are a hard sell. So I think it's difficult to get the timings right to sell players at United. You look at the players they've been trying to sell recently, and they're selling them because they've not played very well. And it's not easy to say to a club, "Do you want to sign this guy who's been rubbish for us for 2 years?" But it is still an area they have to improve, and I think with the youth players, you're seeing that.
Anthony, pack your bags, lad.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Here's a DVD of Anthony's best moments at Manchester United.
And then just edit that bit out, just show them real betters, and you think, bloody hell, what a player. We've waffled on for far too long for the first part, so we'll leave it there for part one. Back in a moment for part two. Welcome back to part two of the Midweek Debate. As usual, we're just going to have a relaxed chit chat in this part, and I'm conscious that the first part was probably longer than it should have been.
Which is good, because we've got nothing to talk about in this part. See you next week.
We did quite well. Ahmad posted an injury update, I think yesterday.
On Snapchat?
Yeah, I don't know who still uses Snapchat.
Oh no, come on, Ahmad, up your game.
I agree. Do you speak the language of emojis?
I can work out what sand timer means.
I'm not that old.
The language of emojis is a minefield these days, isn't it? But yeah, I think I've got the meaning of a sand timer.
Well, it was a sand timer and a smiley face, which I'm reliably told that should be an encouraging update. Apparently, Ruben Amorim suggested he'd be out for the season, didn't he? When he first discussed Ahmad's ankle injury, which I thought was interesting, because at the time when the club released their update, they didn't say that. They said for a number of weeks. That was the exact terminology they used. So I did think to myself, has Amorim made a mistake there? He's then corrected himself, or I should say provided a fresh update after the 1-1 draw against Sociedad. And he said, look, Ahmad could be back before the end of the season. This would be fantastic if he could be back. Realistically, there's no point in rushing him back for the Premier League season, because that's a write-off. But the semi-finals of the Europa League are played in the first week of May. So the 1st of May, and then 7 days later. Be superb to have him back for then, wouldn't it? Yeah,
massively. I think it'd be a real uplift there, and I think it comes at a time when hopefully the last few weeks haven't been a false dawn, and it feels like the attack is clicking without him. You add him in, and I think it's another real attacking weapon. If United do go on to reach the semi-finals of the Europa League and the final, then I think having him back would be huge, and it does seem pretty positive now that he is going to be back in contention and back playing before the end of the season, which is massive.
Am I exaggerating to say, I just put this in a piece today, that he would have been the favourite for the Player of the Year award before his injury? Because Fernandes had been good.
Andre Onana for me.
Player of the Year. It's a bit of an inside joke if you've been listening to most of the podcasts with Onana. He'd been really, really good. Obviously, scored the match winner against Manchester City, scored against Liverpool, hat-trick against Southampton. And Fernandes had been good, but he hadn't been fantastic. In the last few weeks, since Ahmad's been on the sidelines, Fernandes has really stepped up. He's got to be favourite now. He's almost a shoo-in, isn't he, to win it for a third time. Yeah. But that just shows you how good Ahmad was. And he has been such a bright spark in such a miserable season.
Yeah, definitely. I think he would have been favourite. I mean, the Onana joke was for your player of 2024. Well, hang on a minute.
I'm getting accused for this. So context, again, is key, Ty. The MEN and Reach run all the companies. So the MEN, Liverpool Echo, for example, across the nation. They were running a calendar year competition. So each outlet had to nominate a player for that calendar year. Our desk, I say that because it was a team effort, settled on Andre Onana as a calendar year for 2024.
Well, I'll be honest, it was news to me when I was told we'd settled on Onana, to the point that I wrote a piece pushing Ahmad's claims.
Let's get back into it. At that point, it was before Amorim arrived. I'm pretty sure it was at the start of November this was put up, right?
Yeah.
Ahmad hadn't been that good then. He was all right. And it was between Ahmad, Diallo and Onana.
He was very good at the end of last season. I think he started this season pretty well.
Yeah, but he was only in the team for a few weeks.
I was pushing Ahmad's claims and you were pushing Onana's claims. And I think hindsight has proven that one of us knows the game.
The genius was listened to, obviously. The correct opinion was heeded. Let's not talk about that anymore.
Never mention it again. But in terms of player of the season, I think he would have been the favourite at the point he got injured. What Fernandes has done recently with Ahmad being out, I think, has changed it. And you've got to say it's a formality that Fernandes wins it. But even with the injury, I think Ahmad's the only other candidate for me.
Did you watch England on Monday night last night? I'm losing track of my days.
I watched most of it. I mean, it's
just pretty dull again, wasn't it? What I will say, I don't know what people expect of international football. This is what I used to say with Gareth Southgate. International football isn't going to be the most exciting every single game. No. You just have to realise that.
I mean, to be honest, I thought they were better with Southgate under qualifiers. I mean, the true test is going to be in a World Cup, but they used to win qualifiers very easily under Southgate. They made really hard work of both of them, I thought. And I didn't really see it. There there was better pressing at times, but I didn't see any of what Tuchel wanted about let's bring the Premier League style to international football, to be honest.
There was a moment when Rashford burst down the left, half took someone on, just hit it off him and went out for a corner. And I thought, I've watched that so often the last 2 years, 18 months. I said that to my mate. It does feel like we just got into Rashford recently, but has his improvement or his resurgence been slightly overplayed, do you think? Because it was such a low bar.
I mean, he's still not scored, has he? I think he needs a goal pretty desperately. You know, I did a piece the other day that I think what's going to happen in the summer is interesting with him. Villa obviously got the option. You know, it's no secret that he wants to go to Barcelona. I think what he's done this far is promising, but let's face it, in terms of a summer transfer, he's going to be judged on 2 games, and that's the 2 PSG games, unless they go through, when he's going to be judged on 4 games.
But I mean,
that's where clubs make judgments on elite footballers. It's not what he does against Cardiff in the FA Cup. It's what he's going to do against PSG over 2 legs.
Knowing him, he'll turn up for those, won't he, though? And it's against the club who have had a long-standing interest in him, which is added motivation. Just looking at all the
against the club he has flirted with relentlessly. Let's put it that way.
Looking at that fixture building up and thinking about all the factors, it does scream Marcus Rashford as a stormer, I think.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's been in and out of the Villa team, and I think, you know, you look at their 2 January signings. I mean, if they were only keeping one, they'd keep Asensio. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And then Morgan Rogers probably making more of an impact than Rashford. So it kind of does only leave one place in that 3 behind Watkins. So,
well, do you think back to Jadon Sancho last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund, and his performances continued to be pretty underwhelming, but he had that game against PSG when he was fantastic.
What I mean, yeah.
It was against Nuno Mendes, to be fair, who was absolutely awful that night. I don't think much of him, but yeah.
Oh, he's really good against Salah, though, over 2 games the other week. So, you know.
Salah's rubbish, though.
Yeah, famously.
So yeah, let's discuss Sancho briefly then before ending the podcast. Ty, I mean, there's been a suggestion that his loan obligation with Chelsea could be broken for around £5 million. That would be hugely embarrassing for the player, wouldn't it? I mean, that is a real low. And I wrote a piece in it's sad a situation, and someone said, are you a journalist or a fan? And I still think you can see a situation is sad objectively and just stand back and look at it. It sounds like something a hipster would say. I used to really enjoy watching him play for Dortmund. I used to tune in the Bundesliga, watch him play, obviously the team with Haaland and Bellingham. It was really enjoyable. And he's just, the last few years, look, he's got no one but himself to blame, but his career has just regressed so much.
Yeah, I mean, he was great against mediocre defences. Maybe that's what he needs. He'd be brilliant in the Championship. You know, he's been... maybe you can say it's sad, but he's got no one else to blame for himself. I think he's been found out that he's not good enough for this level. And that's just the reality of it. Yes, it's sad, but... You know, he's not worked hard enough.
But I think, so I think he probably is good enough for the level. But yeah, that's right. He's not worked hard enough. He's not made most of it.
I'm not sure he is. In terms of what you expect from modern wingers, I don't think he's at that level of an elite club, to be honest. And I think the Bundesliga suits him because half the time you're coming up against teams. This is the thing with these leagues, that at the top end, when you're playing, you know, when it's, say, City, Bayern Munich, or Liverpool or United against Borussia Dortmund, they're close games. Even if you play in Sporting or Benfica or PSG, it's a high level. But the difference between the Premier League and playing in one of those leagues is that when you play the 15th best team in the league, it's totally different in the Premier League to play in the 15th best team in Germany or Portugal or France. You know, if you did a tournament where 1 to 20 plays each other in every league, Premier League would win every league, and they'd win every league because 10th downwards would win pretty much every match against every other European league. And that is the difference in this league, that there are no free games, maybe apart from Southampton this year, but there are essentially no free games at all. And it's a harder level against 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th in England than it is anywhere else. And that's sometimes where these players get found out, where managers can get found out. And, you know, it's something that Ten Hag, it's something that Ten Hag and Amorim have had to confront, that as managers of Sporting and Ajax, when you play a team that's 12th, 13th, 14th in Holland or Portugal, the difference in quality between the players is massive. And in the Premier League, it's not as big, it's more condensed. And players, these kind of, you know, the unicorn players, the great players in Ajax's team and Sporting's team will win you those games, whereas in the Premier League, often they won't.
Love a unicorn player.
Unicorn player, like Gyökeres.
So no, it's
maybe Anthony.
It's a very good point, though. It's well made. I completely agree.
Yeah.
To be fair, we'll end the podcast on an agreement.
That's a good point.
The debate podcast. Thanks for your time as usual.
Pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks for listening as usual to the listeners. Check out our YouTube channel if you're watching on there. Like and subscribe, please. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, let us know what you think in the comments, and also subscribe on those platforms. Take care and have a great week.